The world around us is hostile to the Word of God and to biblical values, but we are called to be salt and light, to stand for truth in a decaying culture. We are not called to run from the fire, but be willing to step into the fire. God has placed you at this time in history on purpose and for a purpose. Join us as we get better equipped to address civics and culture from a biblical worldview. Welcome to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church. Let's welcome our hosts Alison and Debi Vandenboom.
And today we are talking with Perry Baugher about on the street speaking to the homeless about Jesus. Perry, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my honor and privilege to be here to talk about the homeless.
Yes, I can't wait to dive into this. So let's start with, Arizona has had a big homeless issue. We've seen it all over the news recently. And there's these zones where there's hundreds seemingly homeless people that are just coming from everywhere. So tell us what Arizona is like right now when it comes to the homeless population. And many people don't know what it's like. So has it changed recently and what's going on?
It's a problem. It's a problem that we as the church, not just Dream City Church, but the Church of Jesus Christ, need to step up and let the Lord do his work, but we are his vessels to do the work. Right. And that's what we do on Saturday mornings at Dream Reach. We go out, we have a team meeting, and we just share food and conversation to hundreds of homeless every week. And I don't have the stats on how many homeless, but I'm pretty sure it's around 10,000 or more.
Wow.
In the metropolitan area. And we go about it one person at a time. And we have a plan that we use, and that's we go to the same areas every Saturday, and we try to build relationships. A lot of the homeless know us by name.
Wow.
And we just love on them. We have what we call the red snack bags. They have 2 drinks. They're both nutritional drinks. And then we have some non-perishable food items in there. That is what we call it. We use it as an icebreaker to share the gospel, to just share our testimonies. And with the end game, the result we're after is to change lives, to get a homeless person to the point that they want to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have a great asset in the Phoenix Dream Center to do that. And that's our end goal, is to get a man or a woman to take a ride to the Phoenix Dream Center and start a new journey with Jesus Christ.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you first meet a homeless person, what is their reaction to you? You're coming up with food, you've got stuff in your hands. I mean, are they generally excited that you're there, or are they kind of...
A first timer, they're hesitant, but everybody needs food in their belly. Mm-hmm. And but most of the time, they're very receptive to us being there. And they have just they're in chains that we want to have cut off of them. And so we don't really burden them with where they're at. We just try to love them where they're at.
And what kind of, I wanted to ask a question too. What kinds of things are you seeing? Like how do people end up on the streets? And from what you're seeing?
3 things that we see: excessive drugs, mental illness, and families that are torn apart. We see single moms with 3 or 4 kids in a car.
Yeah.
We see people that are so intoxicated with drugs that they're like zombies now. The fentanyl problem is tremendous, and not only is it just fentanyl, they're mixing drugs too, and it's a sad thing for our society. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that I've, there's a perception with the homeless people that they're out there because they want to be, or, there's no hope left for them. And I love that you are bringing this right away with, we have the hope of bringing people back. And I know the Bible talks a lot about being generous to the poor and, giving to the poor. And I kind of want to ask about a big misconception in even the church and in culture as a whole is because we see these homeless people, everybody assumes the government should be taking care of them, right? And so there's this idea that why don't we just have the government take care of the homeless? Why don't we just have this? And, so is it their job? And my thought is always with this is if we follow the pattern, I always say, how do we end up with, with the result that we're looking for? So if we have the government take care of the homeless, it's a nice idea to not have any responsibility, right? Because then you wouldn't have to go out, we wouldn't have to worry about it, they just wouldn't be there, right? But really, and exactly what you're saying, it's personal responsibility for us to take care of the homeless. And one of the verses I have here, Deuteronomy 15:11 says, "For there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy and to the poor in your land." So the Bible's saying that we're always going to have homeless, right? So that's always going to be the case. So, but the key piece here is that you are bringing Jesus, the only thing that unlocks the ability to get these people true healing.
Correct. And one thing we see that I've seen when I go out with teams, we have 7 teams that go out. 2 of them go to neighborhoods that are families in need, under-resourced neighborhoods, and we give groceries there. But with the homeless, we have 5 or 6 teams that go out, and I'm so thankful. I have a group of people that aren't volunteers. They are servant leaders. They serve Jesus Christ with his love.
Yes.
And we always pray that the eyes of Christ would be seen in us, and the teachings of Christ would be heard from us. And out in the street, there's a big problem. I was in Pastor Tommy's bus ministry in the 80s with Pastor Dale Lane, and it was a different time. We would actually knock on doors, and we still do today. But people would invite you in for a cup of coffee.
They would.
Now you don't know if you're going to get a Glock in your face or whatever.
Right.
And the trust is just diminished between men and women and God. The trust in me being a fellow human being is not there. And the young people that are on the street are so hard to reach because there is no trust, because they're there usually because they got into a drug culture and now they've lost their jobs, they've lost houses, they've lost everything financially.
Right.
And the only thing they have is to survive, is to do drugs and find a way to do them.
Yeah.
And the only people that can break those chains are the people that Jesus sends out to break those chains. He does the chain breaking.
Yes.
We're just there
Amen.
to facilitate the chain breaking. And so, what breaks my heart is the amount of young people that I see on the street. It's
So under 8, are you talking teenagers or young adults or what?
Yeah, young adults, and mostly young adults out of high school and gotten into
Just lost.
Gotten into a lifestyle that the enemy, our enemy, the adversary, has placed in their heart that that this works for them, but in actuality, he's destroying them. He's deceiving them, as he always has. And we want the deceiver to be put under our feet and crushed in these people's lives. And that's what we're out there for.
So do they live in the park or do they live on, you see all these little encampments of people with tents and on the side of the road, and what are you seeing?
Right now, this is starting my 4th year with doing outreach ministry in Phoenix and the metropolitan area here. We serve mostly North Phoenix, Glendale, Central Phoenix. We don't go down to Cass, but the Phoenix Dream Center does.
Right. Yeah.
So we got a pretty good coverage of where they're at to serve them and stuff. The city right now has cleaned the parks up. We used to be able to go into the parks on Saturday, and there would be a group of homeless be in an encampment, and we'd just go in and visit and share with them. But now the parks are being cleaned up, and there's nothing wrong with that. The parks really, all the parks in the city of Phoenix are to be closed at night. You're not supposed to be in the parks.
Right.
But when there's homeless, that's where they live.
Right.
Because it's open ground and there's restrooms there if need be. And but now that they've been pushed out of the parks, now they're going into the underneath the washes, like at 19th Avenue and Greenway.
Yeah.
We have a team that goes there. We have a team that does all of the Cave Creek 19th or Greenway Parkway wash, and the washes is where they're at.
Right.
So they're not actually doing anything to help them. They're just removing them from the parks,
Right.
where they don't have access to a bathroom anymore, but they're still out on the streets.
Yes.
They're just they're not as visible. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have a question kind of for both of you guys on this, that, you know, when young people are driving and they're looking around at this, they're being, you know, they see it looks painful, right? You're like, wow, why are there all these homeless people? What is going on? And they're being pushed the narrative in high schools and colleges that the government should be stepping in right now and taking care of all of these people. The government should be housing these people. They should be feeding these people. They should be doing everything to make sure that there's nobody on the street. And it's this idea of a perfect utopia where nobody has any hurting, nobody has any, you know, issues. And in theory, of course, everybody's going to say, well, yeah, I would love to have nobody hurting and nobody having issues. But Debi, can you give a perspective of that? How do we push back at that narrative? Because we have kids coming up from high school and college that are saying we need the government to control this.
Yeah, I guess that works so well for others.
I know, for anything else, right?
Everything else that the government tries to control, it just never quite works.
Yeah.
Because they're not offering those solutions like what Perry's talking about, right? They're fixing maybe a temporary problem. And a lot of them, I mean, okay, there are homeless shelters, right? There are shelters for women and there's shelters, but they're not going to those. They're not in them. I mean,
Right.
some of them are, but there are not enough beds. They're not enough, and they don't feel safe in them. In a weird way, they feel safer a lot of times in their own little spot on the street where they're in. I mean, that's what I've seen. Have you seen that too? That a lot of them don't want to go to the shelters.
No, they don't.
Right.
And so it would be the same kind of thing where they don't necessarily want to be in that scenario, and they don't have the ultimate solution because their life isn't actually getting turned around. It's just they're being put somewhere, like putting them out of the park, right? It's not actually fixing anything. It's just
Right. So exactly
Moving.
masking it.
what you're saying is you can put somebody in a new and positive environment, but if they don't have the grounding of God to stay there, if they don't have the mindset to become successful, they're going to leave.
Right.
And that's what we see. I mean, I've seen that dealing with homeless shelters. I mean, people have beds, they have shelter, they have food, and they leave. Right. And that's what was shocking to me when I got into this stuff. I was like, well, why would you leave? You have everything you need. You're off the street. It seems like it's that simple. But exactly what you guys are saying is that you have to have the spiritual transformation, which leads into my next question with, you know, if it's not the government's job to take care of these people, right? What role should the church be playing? I mean, God clearly says, you know, we need to take care of the poor. So what role should the church be playing in that?
And so the church at large, right? Because we at Dream City are doing that, but there are probably people listening that are at a church that's not doing something along these lines.
Yes,
and so
churches across the nation. Yeah, what
correct.
should we be doing?
Yeah, what can the church do? The church at large do
Well,
to help?
James talks about it in the book of James. That undefiled religion is taking care of the widow,
Yes.
the orphan, and the needy.
Right.
And that's the church's responsibility. But in the United States of America, it's become a social responsibility, a cultural responsibility that isn't working because it's not God's biblical view of what's to happen.
Yeah.
And if we looked at the amount of money that is taken in taxes, income tax, property tax, sales tax, all sorts of taxes, we should be able to get programs put together. But if that money was directed to the church through a tithe, if every church member tithed, we would not have a problem taking care of the widow, the orphan, and the needy.
Wow.
Right.
That's quite a statement.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
But it,
I mean, that's just my heart. That's just how I feel.
No, I agree with you. Yeah.
You know, Pastor Tommy was a great example of that. His whole outlook is God. He said, "Give me those who nobody else wants." Mm-hmm. That's what he said, because when he's taking care of whoever nobody else wants, then the money follows the ministry.
Yes.
And now we have social programs that waste
right.
thousands, millions, and nobody gets freed.
Right.
Because we can't free ourselves. There's only one who can free us, and that's Jesus Christ.
Well, and even on a basic level, what you just said reminded me of something. What I've talked about, even not from a spiritual perspective, but
Right.
just that when you're looking at those kind of programs, they are the people that are working in them. Not that they have bad intentions. I'm not saying that, but they stay in business by their continuing to be in need. Whereas when you have a program like the Dream Center, they're trying to work themselves out of it, out of the need, right? They're trying to work themselves out of
Right.
to where they're not needed anymore, and you can have those people then come in. This is where you see a lot of people that go through programs and then
Right.
they come back and they volunteer or they work at that organization. Something like the Dream Center is full of people that were used to be residents and then come back and work or volunteer. Same thing with when I've done ministry, it's the women who have gone through something terrible that want to help other women who are going through something at that time too. And you see a lot of that. Whereas if it's monetary, there's a different motivation, and you're trying to keep the numbers up so that the city will continue to give you money, and so that they continue to prove that there's a need, and so they're not like there's another motivation going on
Right.
with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're very thankful for is the Phoenix Dream Center, because it gives us a place where people can go. Right now, there's over 300 people at the Dream Center, so there's more room. We need more room,
Right.
but we have the program in place through the people who run the Dream Center, and those people are people that live there.
Yes.
And I mean, they do their own security, they do their own cooking. Everything is done for your brother or sister who is trying to better their life.
Yeah.
And so one of the things at Dream Reach on Saturday mornings is we have a team that comes faithfully every Saturday morning from the Phoenix Dream Center. And they go out as a team
Wow.
and take the red bags and they take their testimonies, because how do we overcome him? By the blood of the Lamb and the sharing of our testimony.
Amen.
Amen.
Right.
You know? And so here are people that have been on the street, understand what these people are going through, and great things are happening because of that. And
That's awesome. That's wonderful.
that's just something God did. And then we have teams that guys that go out that have been doing it for 20 plus years, 30 years, you know, and
it's not an easy thing, right? I mean, that's when you're dealing with those kind of situations.
Every
right?
Saturday morning,
Every Saturday
they
morning.
give
Early
up.
too, right? What
Yeah.
time do they get here?
Yeah.
What time do you guys get here?
It's 7:30.
Every Saturday, right?
And then we're usually done by 1 or 2 o'clock.
Wow.
But it's not about being done. It's just that's the end of the day, and we're like family. We're like family, helping
Right.
family, and
Yeah.
that's what we do. And I'm so thankful for. I can name names every Saturday they could say, well, I'm going to go golfing today, or I'm going to
Right.
do this, or
Right.
I'm going to play pickleball, or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're out there.
Right. Yeah.
And what our goal is now is to get the young people involved,
right.
because this generation doesn't like to go eyeball to eyeball and share and speak to each other.
Right.
They, it's all the technology, and they really, that's how battles are won,
Right.
is one-on-one. And so I've been praying for that.
Yeah.
My wife and I, Drew, have been praying for that for quite some time. And right after 21 days of prayer, I had get 3 young men that are
Wow.
in Dream City College that are
That's
excited
amazing.
to be a part of this. And so, yeah, it's 40 graduates from Phoenix Dream Center last year have served with us and helped bring in more people. But that's just a drop in the bucket when you think of 12,000 people who are homeless.
Right.
It's a huge challenge now, and now we have greater challenge. I'm seeing it in the Hispanic community that with the open borders.
right.
Now we're getting people that are going to be homeless,
Right.
because sooner or later the money is not going to be there for everybody.
Right.
But I believe the church will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I really want to keep talking about what you're saying here is so key, that it's not a physical location that people need. We see people on the street and we assume, well, we need somewhere for them to go. What you're saying is they need a heart change so that their entire lives change. And so that's what's different about the Dream Center and people actually going there, is they don't want to leave because they're having a spiritual revelation. They're realizing that this is about their soul and really coming to understand who God is and why they were created. And so can you talk a little bit about the process of, you get somebody who you've been talking to and they say, you know what? Yeah, let's go to the Dream Center. Yeah. Take me from that point. What happens next?
I have a great example of that. His first name is Carl.
Okay.
And a guy that is at the church here, a great preacher on the street. His name is Mike. Well, Mike has been seeing Carl on the street for over 20 years.
Wow.
Wow.
And
That's crazy
last
to think
summer, Mike was talking to Carl, and he says, I want you to call Perry when you're ready to go and change life. And this isn't biblical scripture. This is just an old saying. Mm-hmm. But change never comes until the pain of staying the same is greater than the change.
Right.
Right.
And that's what happened to Carl.
Wow.
And so I'm in my office on a Monday morning, and I get this phone call, and Carl says, I'm ready. I go, who is this? This is Carl. And Carl, yeah, Mike said he might be calling me. And so I took him down and to the Dream Center, and on the way, he's starting to, and he just looked terrible. His eyes were just cloudy, and, he was shaking. And so I said, let's stop and get a piece of pizza and a Coca-Cola or something. You get whatever you want before we go to the Dream Center. And so he just needed that to calm, because he knew that God had already spoke to him, because he had been to the LA Dream Center and
Okay.
that's how long he'd been on the street. Wow. So anyway, Carl goes to the Dream Center. He is now an RA, a residence assistant. He loves the Lord Jesus. You look at him and he's lifting weights and he's physically fit and his eyes are clear, and
he completed the program, right? And then now he's helping
and now
other
he's
people.
now he's going into the second phase.
Wow.
And he's staying at the Dream Center, but he has a dream of having a commercial cleaning business. And I said, well, God will honor your dreams, but you have to work at them, Carl. Yeah. So that's just a victory that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And we had Shonda. She was on. You talked about what they do when we are. Well, she was on the street. I have pictures of her before and after. And John and Mike were down on the wash, down right on Cave Creek Road and Greenway Parkway, right down where you see there's a lot of homeless in that, right at that QT and everything. And that's another thing. QTs have cleaned up. They don't allow stuff like that. So you can push them out, but they have to live somewhere.
Right.
So anyway, Shonda, she would never look at us when we would go and talk to her. And for about 3 months, we didn't see her. 4 months, didn't see her. And last fall, we're having our team meeting, and she walks in with the Dream Center team.
Wow.
To do outreach, and we didn't even know where she was.
Wow.
And she was cleaned up. Her legs were so bad that they looked like they were about ready to explode from, diabetes probably and some other, drug-related things. But now her legs look beautiful. John and myself took her out to lunch. Went down to the Dream Center. She's graduated from the 6 months, and she's a life change.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, 2 out of 12,000.
No, but each one is important, right? It's
Amen.
those
Yes.
single, right? I mean, those are the single
Yes.
things.
Yep.
So just as I think we're getting close to time, but how has the city made your job harder? We were talking before before we were recording, we were talking about how the city's made it more difficult for you to go do and reach these people that you're talking about, the Shondas and the Carls and those people. How has the city government made it harder?
Yeah, before this virus hit, we used to go to Sunny Slope Park, and then a park over at Cortez Park. And we would just pull up, me and a guy by the name of John, we would pull up and we had tents, and we would actually put up tents with chairs, and we would have a place to share the gospel. We had things set up for kids in the park, and then we would serve hot dogs and chips and just spend an afternoon in the park. Well, after COVID came into being, that all changed. We can't do that anymore. We couldn't be in the parks doing that. And it hasn't, they've just put more regulations. You have to have a food permit to cook food.
To serve free hot dogs, right, yeah.
You have to have a special permit, and I think it's for over 50 people. And we used to set up chairs for 100 people.
Right.
And nobody would say anything about it.
Right.
Well, and you don't know how many people are going to show up, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's hard to plan for that.
And we would knock on the doors like at 10 o'clock and say, hey, we're going to have a lunch at 1 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah.
And we would have a special event. And or we would go to an empty lot if we got permission from the owner. And that's all sort of dried up because they call it trespassing even if you've got permission. Yeah.
Right. We've seen a huge shift of that during, the pandemic and everything. And let's talk about that for a second, Debbie, as far as, people feel like these things are things that they can't make an impact in. And, we know in Arizona, in our cities, in our towns, we have power at the local level. And that's true across the nation. We have power at the local level. So what does that mean? If you've heard get involved locally, that is the local level groups that control things. So for this, it's Phoenix City Council, right? So the Phoenix City Council is made up of our mayor and 8 council members elected by the people on a nonpartisan ballot. They have a 4-year term, so they're elected for a 4-year period. And that is a group of people who make decisions about the police budget. They make decisions about things that go on within the fire department, all these different departments, the parks and recreation, all of that stuff. They make choices on. And so something that we've seen, that I've been becoming aware of the last 4 or 5 years is they have public meetings. Not very many people show up to those meetings. You know, they have things where you can leave a public comment and say, hey, here's what I think. And when these elected officials have so much time where nobody contacts them, nobody says anything, they get to where, hey, I can do whatever I want, right? Because I'm not being held accountable. So for this, what is our call to action, Debi?
Yeah, so I think really with that is being more plugged into the city council and knowing, because you and I have talked about this when we've trained and done classes, that the local level is really where you have the most power to affect things that are affecting the church, right? It's affecting the ability that you have to minister in the parks. It's affecting the ability of the Dream Center to do the work that they're doing, these decisions that they're making. And so we need to be paying attention to who's getting elected, paying attention. We tend to pay attention to the presidential races, but not those local races. And really, those are the ones that affect us most directly.
Yes, and if you look at the people who are there, and now I don't want to sound like I'm judgmental, but whenever a believer gets up and starts talking about church for social reasons, we get shut down.
Shut down, right.
But we have to stand stronger than what we are, because we can't change the system without changing hearts.
Yes.
And
it takes showing up to do that, right?
Yes, and most of the people that are at those meetings, I don't see fruit or accomplishments that glorify the Lord Jesus in their decision making.
Correct.
But we need people to stand up. Government has to be part of the church,
right?
And church has to be part of the government, and that's just the way God really intends things to happen.
Because we're supposed to be salt and light in the whole, and go into all the world, not this area, but not over here. Yeah, it's something that we've talked about.
Well, that's the commandment that Jesus gave us,
right?
As believers, go.
And that includes going to school board meetings and city council meetings and those kind of things, and paying attention to who is your city council member and what are they doing and how do they vote. And again, those things are public. They are online, and you can find them very easily at what was you had the web address for Phoenix. So every city has their own, but this is just for Phoenix.
Yes. So for Phoenix, it's phoenix.gov/mayor council. So, a very simple way is just go to your search engine and type in Phoenix City Council, Tempe City Council, wherever you live. And start to figure out, just like you said, who are the board members, who are the council members, and all of those things. They are public meetings. They allow public comments. You can watch them online, so they're very accessible and easy to take action. So that's our action item for you, is to be informed, to know what's going on, and in turn that helps us as individuals and as the church to have the ability to go out and actually do what we're called to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then how can people help you if they want to get connected and be part of what you're doing with Dream Reach? How can
the only thing that we require is a background check for the Dream City Church, and it's just a check more or less to protect children. Yeah. And it's really not an FBI check, but and I never see that, but it has to be done before you can serve with us. And just to call the church and get my number. My number is 602-404-7465. And if I don't, leave me a voicemail, and I will get back to you. Because we want people to serve.
To serve, yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Perry, for being on the show today. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
Thank you.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify and follow us on social media. Find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.